Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Cherie and today I'm going to be talking about my experience at Central St. Martin's and how I made one of my first projects, the White Project, in my first year of my bachelor's degree. I'll also talk about my reasoning for going to CSM and why I think it can be a useful stepping stone for your career if you're looking to work in the fashion industry. For those of you who don't know, CSM is one of the most famous, if not the most notorious, institutions and design universities in the world. There is a notable list of famous alumni including fashion's bad boy Alexander McQueen, John Galliano, as well as Stella McCartney, Phoebe Philo of Celine, who was really instrumental in making elegant but functional and kind of edgy women's wear in the 2010s. More contemporary designers include Richard Quinn, whose fashion show at London Fashion Week was one of the only shows that Queen Elizabeth II ever saw. Richard actually mentored us in our second year for a project. Maybe I'll talk about that in another video. Other designers include J.W. Anderson, who was the creative director of Loewe. You might know him from his line at Uniqlo, as well as designing costumes for the 2024 film Challengers. You can start to see why going to CSM is such a big deal if you want to work in fashion, fine art, or entertainment. So when I was applying for university, I knew that if I wanted to make it big in luxury fashion, then I would have to go to CSM. In my mind at the time, I thought that if I didn't go to CSM, then the gates of luxury fashion would be closed to me forever. Obviously, it's not, but it makes it easier if you have those credentials to at least help you get your foot in the door. My family isn't in the fashion industry, except for my grandma, who used to work as a seamstress, and she would often work from home on her industrial machine while she had 6 children to care for. I am super proud of my family, but I also knew that I needed to get a leg up, and that is why I decided to go for CSM. Most of all, my design heroes were all from CSM, so I figured that was the place to be. And so, for 6 years, I was at CSM. I did my foundation degree, and then I went on to battle it out for a place in the bachelor's degree because for the foundation, they often take more students than they can take for the actual bachelor's. I like to joke that it turned into a medical degree in length only. At CSM, there are 5 different pathways that you can choose from. There's women's wear, which is the most famous, menswear, print, knit, and FDM, which is fashion design with marketing. I chose to do fashion design with print, which is a really great degree because it combines the disciplines of surface and print design with garment design and creation. In a sense, you get the best of both worlds. Also, I had access to the print and dye studio, which the women's wear and menswear students did not have access to. During my time on the fashion degree, we were adjacent to a lot of industry events and people who would come in to talk to us. Some of them included Donatella Versace of Versace, who was promoting her book and she came in to talk to us about it. There was also Anna Wintour, who I missed because I was not in the country at the time. I mean, it also meant that as a student, I was able to reach out to suppliers and manufacturers and ask whether they would be interested in sponsoring some projects, so it really helped cut down on material costs. And having the degree in tow, it gave me more credibility, and I found that manufacturers were more interested in sponsoring me or giving me their waste materials. There were also some collaborative brand projects that we got to do with Chanel and Balenciaga. Unfortunately, my class did not do these due to scheduling conflicts, but those projects were really coveted because it would offer an internship at those brands afterwards. As you can imagine, it created a lot of competition. Although we had a lot of industry people come in and a lot of brand partnerships and opportunities, at the same time, I found it was a really difficult space to navigate in, and my classmates also felt similarly in the sense that you really want to see your friends do well, but also because the bachelor's and master's degree students were often competing for the same jobs, it meant that there wasn't as much to go around. So a lot of the time, more often than not, it would be really hard to get that spot. I often struggled with self-doubt and I would always think about things that I could have done better because in my mind, every missed opportunity was another confirmation that my abilities were not good. It also kind of hurt when people didn't like my work, even more so because creative work is often really personal. But in hindsight, I'm really glad that I learned how to deal with rejection in that way because in the fashion and the art world, fashion in particular is super mercurial, and a lot of the time it has nothing to do with your ability as a designer. Just doing hard work isn't enough in this industry. You really need to keep building your network and trying to look for opportunities yourself. In that way, I was able to get my internship at Louis Vuitton, and I also worked at Casablanca, Paris, and it was a really great experience because in both settings I really got to experience the commercial world and also really get to see how the ateliers work. So enough introduction. A lot of people in the comments have been asking me about my portfolio, how I got into CSM, what my sketchbook looked like, and so the reason why I want to talk about the White project is for you to get an idea of the kind of projects we were doing on the degree and the things that the tutors like to see in the sketchbooks, and maybe that will help you if you're thinking of applying to CSM. I worked on this project back in 2019, and while it's fair to say that my technical skills at the time were bad to non-existent, I'd like to believe that I'm a lot better now. It was the first time that I had to properly make a head-to-toe look with very minimal technical skills, and if I'm being honest, when I look back at it now, I'm kind of impressed at what I was able to achieve knowing so little. That year we actually got to present our looks in the fashion awards held in the Royal Albert Hall in 2019, and I think it was one of the most surreal experiences on the degree. I was modeling for my friend and another friend was modeling for my look, and so together we all started flogging our wares in front of Rihanna and A$AP Rocky. Kind of wild, but maybe that's a story for another video. All the students from the 5 pathways had to create a look using 2 materials, cotton and ultra suede, which were sponsored to us by a company called Torre, which is the manufacturer that is behind a lot of the material innovation at Uniqlo. For example, they developed the materials for Airism and Heat Tech. Also, because there were so many of us, we all had to get our designs approved by our tutors before they would sign off the meters of fabric for us. So for example, if you have a smaller look, then you get maybe like 3 to 4 meters of fabric, and then if you have a bigger look, you might get 20 meters of fabric. The White project is pretty famous among the fashion universities and also the fashion press because it's 3 weeks of trial by fire for all students in their first year to create and design a look from scratch. I think the best part of the White project in hindsight is also pushing you to make something that you might not have thought you could. Especially when I started, I really wasn't confident in my sewing skills, but I had a lot of ideas, and I think execution is just as important as being able to design. If you don't know how to execute or sew something properly, or know exactly what interfacing to use to keep it all structurally intact, then your design outcome will not look the same as the way you sketched it. So I think both go hand in hand, but the White project was kind of like a nice taste of what you could do in your current form. So my concept was all about feeling super alone in London when I first moved, and I started looking at a lot of pop culture references that I felt referenced that idea of loneliness and brokenness also. I think it's like a reflection of my mental state of mind at the time. I was looking at films like Edward Scissorhands, A Nightmare Before Christmas, as well as my favorite musical of all time, The Phantom of the Opera. For me, it was hard to keep up with how mature everyone else seemed to be, and I've always struggled with making friends since I was young. Obviously now I'm happy to say that I'm quite well adjusted, and I'm lucky to have some really good friends even if I don't see them as often as I would like. But it's true that all of these things at the time combined to make me feel super lonely and misunderstood. I started changing the way that I dressed and the way I did my makeup in hopes that people would think that I was more CSM worthy. I don't know if you know, but CSM is really famous for allowing students the freedom of dressing however they like in class. I remember going to CSM and being amazed at how creatively people dressed, and there was even a famous anonymous account called That's So CSM, which chronicled people's looks day to day. But beyond that, even though I was dressing because I felt that I needed to dress a certain way to be at CSM, I realized that it was becoming more performative and wasn't really a reflection of myself. If anything, was making me feel even more uncomfortable. Anyway, I wanted to channel that feeling in my design. So one thing that ties them all together is that feeling of brokenness, which I think is really well represented through the Phantom's mask, which he wears to conceal the parts of himself that he hates the most, as well as Sally's character design in Nightmare Before Christmas, the way she's able to sew on her limbs and cut them off so she can maneuver through different spaces. One artist that I really looked at was an artist called Anna Ottenberg, who makes these incredible sculptures of limbs and combines technology to make eerie commentary on the contemporary woman. Just a quick disclaimer, I will try and reference all of the films and images that I pulled from, but I do not own these images and all the rights go to their respective owners. The sketchbooks themselves are almost like little objects of art that fully immerse the viewer into your concept. They create an atmosphere, and some people can get super creative with their presentation if it's relevant. During the degree at CSM, we really focused on the creative side of design, but didn't focus so much on the technical production. We were encouraged to do that by doing industry placements during our placement year. If that's something you're more interested in, then I would suggest doing a course at London College of Fashion, at Mod Art in Paris, or even at FIT in New York. I wanted to create a full character with my look that truly represented how I felt, almost like an avatar. I was so desperate for a friend that I just wanted to Frankenstein someone together and just build my own best friend. Not just with the dress and shoes and arm brace, but also design accessories like jewelry and shoes. I worked with my friend Jennifer, who was a fine art student at CSM as well, and she created a beautiful latex mask complete with fake stitches to create an effect that reminded me of Edward Scissorhands. One of the biggest challenges for me was the lack of color. I made up for it by adding a lot of texture. I experimented with pouring resin onto textiles so that they would solidify, and they were really uncomfortable to wear, but I added them in anyway because I thought it looked cool. I wanted my model to look more imposing, so I spray painted a trolley and I got her to hold it. The dress itself took a while to figure out because I did not know how to combine the top and the bottom together at that time. I did a lot of draping on my friends, and I cut out some dress shirts that I got at a charity shop and draped them around until I found a shape that I liked. And then for the skirt, which was actually detachable, I draped it on the stand, and then I added some ruffles and stationery rings to kind of bind it together and give it that little punk look. The corset I made by wrapping a ton of sellotape around a mannequin and then cutting the sellotape off and then tracing the shape onto fabric so that I could create a corset that was the same shape. Obviously, this dress is not meant to be worn. I don't even think it's machine washable, but if you look at it from the perspective of it being a sculpture, it becomes, I guess, more of a statement. To make it look more cyborg looking, I got some screws and hinges from Poundland, and then I hand embroidered them onto the fabric to give it more texture as well. For the side wings, I created these limb looking objects, and then I stuffed them and ripped them a little so that the stuffing would come out to reference the design of Sally's limbs, and then I attached them onto the corset top. I'm quite proud of how it turned out, especially because it was my first project at CSM, and I really did not know a lot about garment construction at the time. Obviously, my technical skills have improved a lot since then, and if you're curious to see what I was up to last year, you can check out my shorts videos about my final graduate collection at Central St. Martin's. Given the chance, I doubt that I would remake the white project in the same way if I were to redo it now, but at the time it marked a pivotal point for all of us because it was a chance to truly experiment and take creative chances before we go out into the commercial world and start having to design in a more functional and commercial way. Sure, it might not be something you can put in the wash, but it's a moment that you can immortalize through photo shoots, and I know of classmates who have gotten their white show projects worn by celebrities, and that's how that kickstarts their careers. Even though it was a trial by fire, I feel like it was really brought to life by the photos that I took with some of my friends back in Hong Kong in my gap year. I took the dress home with me, and then I also got it shot by my photographer friend Brandon Ho, who is an incredible photographer, and my friend Shannon, who was such a champ and modeled the really heavy dress on the rocky beach in Hong Kong. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and comment below, and if you have any burning questions about CSM, I will do my best to answer them and even make another video talking about it. Bye for now, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your week.